Hey everyone, this is Kono once again, and welcome back to another episode of Monster Talks. Monster Talks is a series that explores the different characteristics of the different monsters that have arrived in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. In the previous episode of Monster Talks, we explored the different characteristics of a veteran Flying Wyvern that made its return in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, and that is none other than the Ice Tusk Wyvern, the Barioth itself. If you would like to check out that previous episode of Monster Talks, as well as all other previous episodes of the Monster Talk series, you can go ahead and check the link down in the description below for the full playlist of the Monster Talk series, so you can go ahead and enjoy them at your own leisure. In today's episode of Monster Talks, we're going to be exploring the different characteristics of a veteran Flying Wyvern that makes its return in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. But more importantly, this particular Flying Wyvern is the very first flagship monster that we get introduced to that has made its return in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. And that is none other than the Swift Wyvern, the NARGACUGA itself. The NARGACUGA is a monster that first made its debut as the flagship monster of Monster Hunter Freedom Unite for the PSP. Titled as the Swift Wyvern, the NARGACUGA itself is well documented for its cunning behavior and overall ferocious agility, making it a very deadly encounter back in the old world. And in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, the NARGACUGA itself arrives in the new world even fiercer than ever before, challenging both monster and hunter alike for the title of Apex Predator within the new world itself. Let's go ahead and find out what makes the NARGACUGA itself such an amazing addition to the number of veteran monsters that make their return in Monster Hunter World Iceborne by marking their territories within the new world itself. Exploring the physical characteristics and anatomy of the NARGACUGA itself, one of the most prominent features when it comes to the NARGACUGA itself is the obsidian black coloration that encompasses the entire body of the NARGACUGA itself. This black coloration is supported by a number of red patches across the NARGACUGA's wings as well as the NARGACUGA's face. Now when it comes to the overall posture and silhouette, the NARGACUGA doesn't take on the standard avian-like posture and silhouette seen on other flying wyverns such as the Legiana or the Rathalos. Instead, when it comes to the NARGACUGA, it takes on a mammal-like posture similar to that of a modern-day large cat, a trait that it shares with the Barioth itself. Now this particular posture and silhouette makes the NARGACUGA almost comparable to that of a modern-day Black Panther, especially when it comes to their overall posture as well as coloration. Now one of the more unique aspects of the NARGACUGA's overall anatomy is the prehensile tail of the NARGACUGA itself. The prehensile tail allows the NARGACUGA to easily manipulate its tail and easily weaponize it when it comes into combat with any other monsters or any hunters. This unique prehensile property is also supported by another unique property by the NARGACUGA's tail, which is to generate tail spikes, further enhancing the overall physical capabilities of the NARGACUGA's tail. These tail spikes are also detachable from the NARGACUGA's tail, meaning that if the NARGACUGA wishes to do so, it can actually use these tail spikes as potential projectile against any hunters or any other monsters. Now another unique feature of the NARGACUGA anatomy is within the wings. When it comes to the wings of the NARGACUGA, you will notice that the wings of the NARGACUGA itself have a very bladed-like feature almost akin to that of dual blades. This is because of the fact that the NARGACUGA itself easily weaponizes its wings much like that of its tail by using these bladed appendages on its wings to slash through its prey or slash down any opponents, meaning that the NARGACUGA's overall body structure is designed for the NARGACUGA to weaponize it much more easily. Now when it comes to the face of the Nargacuga itself, it takes on a very cat-like feature, again very similar to that of a modern day Black Panther, albeit with some certain changes, especially when it comes to the overall snout structure of the Nargacuga's face, as well as the larger ears. Now one of the most unique feature of the Nargacuga's face and head has to be within the eyes. When it comes to the eyes of the Nargacuga itself, it takes on a very bright glow when the Nargacuga becomes enraged. This is usually signified with the red fur on the Nargacuga's face, reflecting the glowing red light on the Nargacuga's eyes, meaning that the Nargacuga has become enraged. Now this unique property of glowing eyes do give the Nargacuga itself its signature light trails when the Nargacuga becomes enraged, especially when it comes into contact with hunters during nighttime or in dark spaces such as the inner woods of the ancient forest. Many hunters will notice that the Nargacuga's eyes start to leave light trails when it starts to move around. This is the most unique feature of the Nargacuga itself, not seen in any other monsters within the New World itself so far. Overall, the structure of the Nargacuga itself is designed for the Nargacuga to easily weaponize its overall body in tandem with its overall deadly agility, making it a very unique structure for a Flying Wyvern. Now then, swiftly moving on to the Nargacuga's overall behavior as well as aggression, the Nargacuga is considered an apex predator within the New World itself, especially when it comes to the ancient forest as well as the coral highlands. Being an apex predator means the Nargacuga itself will challenge any other monsters that dare to try to overthrow it for the position of apex predator, such as the Rathalos itself for example, meaning that in certain case scenarios the Nargacuga itself will engage in a turf war with certain monsters within the New World. Now when it comes to engagement between the Nargacuga itself and hunters, the Nargacuga itself is aggressive, however it's not hyper aggressive. This means that you can actually take some time before the Nargacuga engages any hunter in combat. This is usually indicated by the eye icon on the minimap when you first encounter a Nargacuga and don't hit it in any way, shape or form, or don't provoke it. When the Nargacuga itself can see you, the eye icon will indicate that it can actually see you within its line of sight, and if you don't move, eventually the Nargacuga itself will engage you in combat, showing the aggression of the Nargacuga itself, deeming a hunter a potential threat to its position as an apex predator if they do not move out from its line of sight. Now shifting from the overall behavior and aggression towards hunters when it comes to the Nargacuga itself, let's talk about the combat aggression of the Nargacuga itself. When it comes to combat aggression, the Nargacuga is far more aggressive than some of the other monsters that we see in the game so far. When it comes to combat aggression, the Nargacuga is so aggressive that it moves around quite a lot and striking down its opponents repeatedly with fast movements and deadly precision. Being a cunning monster means that the Nargacuga itself prioritizes positioning above all else, especially during combat. This allows the Nargacuga itself to evade more easily as well as strike down its opponents from the back with relative ease. This is the combination of the Nargacuga's unique anatomy as well as deadly agility combined into one deadly monster, allowing the Nargacuga itself to manipulate the environment around it as well as its own body to its own benefits. The Nargacuga is a very cunning monster and a very aggressive monster at that, earning it its title of an apex predator within the New World itself. Now then, let's go ahead and swiftly explore the overall combat capabilities and attack patterns of the Nargacuga itself. Nargacuga is titled as the Swift Wyvern, and rightly so, because when it comes to Nargacuga, movement and speed is the name of the game, taking advantage of its overall agility. The Nargacuga itself tends to move around the battlefield, weaving and dodging left and right, up and down, in order to find the best positions to either evade attacks or strike down its opponents. Nargacuga itself is also clever enough to disable pitfall traps in order for it to continue moving around the battlefield, especially when it's not enraged. When the Nargacuga is enraged, it can fall prey to a pitfall trap, however it is best to use something like a shock trap because they will work regardless of the Nargacuga's current state. Now, when it comes to the overall attack patterns of Nargacuga itself, this is a monster that weaponizes its entire body really effectively. It has your standard biting attack as well as your standard tail whip attack, which can be seen with many other monsters throughout the game. The tail whip attack, much like that of the Bariots, can be executed either towards the left or towards the right, aiming at the player. Now, in terms of unique attack patterns that the Nargacuga has, the Nargacuga itself has a very standard pouncing attack that the Nargacuga can use in order to strike down its opponents. It takes on a very quick stance and then quickly swipes its wings using the blade of its wings to strike down the players. This is a fairly basic attack that gets enhanced when the Nargacuga becomes enraged because the Nargacuga can execute this much more quickly when it is enraged. Next up, you have a tackle attack from the Nargacuga itself. The tackle attack is when the Nargacuga itself starts to weave its body left and right, tackling any player that might get in its path. Now this attack, again much like that of the pouncing attack, can be enhanced when Nargacuga becomes enraged by dealing more damage to the players, but the speed remains relatively the same. Next up, you have Nargacuga's unique ability to use its tail spikes as projectiles. Now these tail spikes, if they do hit anyone, will start to cause bleeding to them, and they have the added property of actually lingering on the ground for a couple of seconds, meaning that the Nargacuga can use them as traps in order to cause bleedings to any hunters who are unaware that they are on the ground. So do keep an eye out for them if you're fighting the Nargacuga, because you may randomly start bleeding and not even know it. Next up, you have the Nargacuga's combination of a lunging attack followed by a tail whip attack. Now this lunging attack followed by a tail whip attack uses the entire body of the Nargacuga itself, showing how efficient Nargacuga is in weaponizing its body. First up, the Nargacuga will leap towards the player, dealing a significant amount of damage to anyone who hits them, and anyone who didn't get hit will get followed up with a tail whip attack, again dealing a significant amount of damage to them. This is a 2-hit attack pattern, meaning that if you're wearing something like the Rocksteady Mantle, you will get dealt 2 hits to you, meaning that you can get dealt more damage towards you. So do keep an eye out for this attack if you are fighting the Nargacuga itself and wearing something like the Rocksteady Mantle. Now finally, let's go ahead and explore the 2 most powerful attacks of the Nargacuga itself. First and foremost, you have the spin attack. The spin attack of the Nargacuga is a very uniquely animated attack pattern in that the Nargacuga itself, using its high speed, will spin around very quickly in a full 360 motion, whipping anyone that gets in its vicinity. This uses the entire body of the Nargacuga itself to deal as much damage to any players that touch the Nargacuga itself as it's spinning as possible. Now this particular attack pattern gets enhanced when Nargacuga becomes enraged, in that Nargacuga itself will actually execute a double spin attack by doing the initial spin attack and then quickly following it up with another spin attack in the opposite direction. So do keep an eye out for this attack pattern, especially when the Nargacuga is enraged, because it is a powerful attack and it can be executed twice when the Nargacuga itself is completely enraged. Now finally, we have ourselves the most powerful attack of the Nargacuga itself and its possible signature attack, the Nargacuga Tail Slam. The Nargacuga Tail Slam is possibly the main and most powerful attack that the Nargacuga has in its arsenal in order to take down any opponents, whether they be monsters or hunters alike. This is signified by the Nargacuga taking on a very quick stance, but rather than pouncing towards the opponent, the Nargacuga itself turns around completely in a 180-degree motion and slams its tail with great force towards any of its opponents. Now this tail slam has 2 variations, much like that of the spin attack. The first one is your standard tail slam attack, in which the Nargacuga will execute the tail slam once. The second version, in its rage mode, is the double tail slam, much like that of the double spin attack, in that the Nargacuga itself will slam its tail twice in rapid succession. The first one has the tail spikes completely covered in its tail, and the second variation on the double tail slam has the tail spikes completely unfurled. Now the tail spikes themselves do cause a problem for the Nargacuga itself, in that the tail spikes actually can get the Nargacuga stuck on the ground, meaning that the Nargacuga is open for an attack. This is an attack pattern that is considered its most powerful, but also its most dangerous because it does leave the Nargacuga open for an attack. So do take advantage of that moment to actually attack the Nargacuga itself if you manage to evade the Nargacuga Tail Slam. Now overall, as you can see, the Nargacuga itself is a monster that takes advantage of its overall anatomy in combination with its cunning behavior and great agility. This is a monster known as the Swift Wyvern, and rightly so, because the combination of anatomy, behavior, as well as that of its overall capabilities allows the Nargacuga itself to quickly execute its opponents with powerful and swift attacks. Now overall, the Nargacuga itself is an awesome addition to the group of veteran monsters that made their return in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. From the way it looks to the way it fights, all the way to its general presence in the new world itself, the Nargacuga itself feels like a completely new experience whether you're a veteran fighter in terms of the new world itself, or you're a completely new player starting out in the new world when it comes to the Monster Hunter series. In terms of its overall looks, it looks extremely awesome in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, especially when it comes to the finer details of the Nargacuga itself. The fur details, the tail spikes, the wing blades themselves, the face of the Nargacuga, all of these finer details that just couldn't be done in previous generation games look really amazing in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. I think when it comes to the overall look of the Nargacuga itself, with the amount of fine detailing that Capcom did, this particular monster looks almost like a real-life creature when it comes to the finer details of this particular monster. I think Capcom has done a stellar job when it comes to the Nargacuga itself in terms of its overall looks in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Maybe the one tiny detail that I'm a little bit upset about is the eye trails, because they're not as prominent in Monster Hunter World Iceborne as they are in previous generation games, but that doesn't take away from the overall amazing look of the Nargacuga itself in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Honestly, it's a small trade-off, but overall Nargacuga looks amazing regardless. In terms of its overall combat capabilities and when you're actually fighting the Nargacuga itself, it doesn't take away any of the things that you know if you're a veteran hunter, but at the same time it adds in a number of new things that you wouldn't know if you are a veteran hunter, because this particular monster has a number of new movesets not seen in previous generation games, and honestly that feels like a fresh experience when it comes to Monster Hunter World Iceborne. And alongside this, because the Nargacuga itself has turf wars that we don't normally see in previous generation games, because that mechanic never existed in previous generation games, Nargacuga itself looks even more awesome when you're fighting it and you have other monsters invading the area, because you get to see how Nargacuga itself interacts with the different monsters in the new world itself. Overall, Capcom again, stellar job when it comes to the combat and the overall experience of fighting the Nargacuga itself in the new world. So whether you're a new player or a veteran player, the Nargacuga itself will feel like a fresh experience when it comes to Monster Hunter World Iceborne in the new world itself. So overall, Nargacuga, awesome addition to the new world cast of monsters in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now that is pretty much it for this episode of Monster Talks. In the next episode of Monster Talks, we're going to be looking into the next veteran flagship monster that we get introduced to in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. This flagship monster shares its position as a flagship monster with a group of monsters known as the Fated Four, and that is none other than the Cutting Wyvern, the Glavenus itself. Now if you enjoyed these videos, please feel free to leave a like on the video itself, as well as subscribe to the channel so you can go ahead and catch up on the latest episodes of Monster Talks or any future Monster Hunter content that I might be playing in future, or any other games that I might be playing in future. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Onward and upward.